The morning shift at Forward Operating Base Kestrel began like any other Tuesday in the remote mountains of Afghanistan. Staff Sergeant Maria Santos adjusted her headset and checked the radio frequencies one final time before settling into her chair at the communications center. At 26, she had spent 4 years managing battlefield communications, coordinating supply drops, and maintaining contact between scattered units across the hostile terrain. Her small frame and quiet demeanor often led newcomers to underestimate her capabilities, but Maria had earned respect through her unwavering dedication and sharp technical skills. The communications center buzzed with the familiar static of radio chatter. Multiple screens displayed real-time positions of friendly forces, weather updates, and priority message queues. Maria's fingers danced across the keyboard as she processed routine status reports from various outposts. The work required intense concentration, but she thrived on the responsibility of keeping soldiers connected across dangerous territory. Outside the reinforced concrete walls, the base hummed with activity. Soldiers conducted morning inspections, mechanics worked on vehicles, and the kitchen staff prepared breakfast for nearly 300 personnel. The distant mountains stood silent under the pale dawn sky, their peaks shrouded in morning mist that would burn off within hours. Maria's supervisor, Sergeant First Class Johnson, entered the communications center carrying a steaming cup of coffee. Johnson, a veteran with 15 years of military experience, had mentored Maria since her arrival at the base. His weathered face showed the strain of multiple deployments, but his eyes remained sharp and alert. "Anything unusual overnight?" Johnson asked, settling into the adjacent workstation. "Negative, Sergeant. Routine traffic only," Maria replied, her eyes never leaving the screens. 3rd Platoon reported movement near grid reference 472, but it turned out to be local herders with their livestock. Johnson nodded approvingly. Maria's reports were always precise and professional. She had developed a reputation for catching details others missed, and her calm demeanor under pressure made her invaluable during crisis situations. The radio crackled with an incoming transmission from Outpost Viper, located 12 kilometers northeast of the main base. Lieutenant Coleman's voice carried through the speakers, requesting a resupply of medical equipment for their aid station. Maria logged the request and began coordinating with the supply depot. As she worked, Maria thought about her family back in Texas. Her younger brother was starting his senior year of high school, and her parents ran a small restaurant in San Antonio. They worried constantly about her deployment, but Maria felt proud of her service. The work challenged her intellectually and provided opportunities for advancement she never would have found in civilian life. The communications center represented the nerve center of base operations. Every patrol, supply convoy, and emergency response relied on Maria and her team to maintain clear channels of communication. The responsibility weighed heavily, but Maria had proven herself capable time and again. Around mid-morning, the routine was interrupted by an urgent transmission from Alpha Company. Captain Rodriguez's voice cut through the static with unusual tension. His unit was conducting a routine patrol near the village of Kandesh when they encountered unexpected resistance. The transmission quality was poor, filled with background noise that made details difficult to discern. "Base, this is Alpha 6, Rodriguez transmitted. We've got a situation developing. Request immediate support." Maria's training kicked in automatically. She switched to the emergency frequency and began documenting the transmission. Her fingers moved quickly across the keyboard, logging timestamps and coordinates while simultaneously alerting the operations center. "Alpha 6, this is Base Commo. Say again your situation and current position," Maria responded, her voice steady despite the adrenaline beginning to course through her system. The response came fragmented, broken by static, and what sounded like distant explosions. Rodriguez's unit had encountered a larger force than anticipated, and they were requesting immediate reinforcement and medical evacuation capabilities. Johnson appeared at Maria's shoulder, having heard the urgency in the radio traffic. Together, they worked to establish clearer communication with the patrol while simultaneously coordinating with base command. The situation was developing rapidly, and accurate information flow would be critical to ensuring the safety of the soldiers in the field. Maria's headset buzzed with multiple simultaneous transmissions. The base commander needed real-time updates, the medical team required detailed casualty reports, and aviation units were standing by for potential evacuation missions. Managing the flood of communication required intense focus and precise prioritization. The next several hours passed in a blur of coordinated activity. Maria remained at her station, serving as the primary link between the embattled patrol and base operations. Her calm professionalism helped maintain order during the chaotic situation, and her technical expertise ensured that critical information flowed smoothly between all parties. As the immediate crisis subsided and the patrol returned safely to base, Maria finally allowed herself a moment to decompress. The successful coordination effort had prevented potential casualties and demonstrated the vital importance of reliable communications in combat operations. Johnson approached her workstation as the afternoon shift arrived. "Outstanding work today, Santos. Your performance under pressure made the difference out there." Maria nodded appreciatively, feeling the satisfaction that came from a job well done. She began organizing her reports and preparing the handover briefing for the incoming shift. The routine nature of the task provided a welcome contrast to the morning's excitement. As evening approached, Maria made her way to the dining facility. The mess hall buzzed with conversation about the day's events. Several soldiers from Alpha Company approached her table to express their gratitude for her role in coordinating their safe return. Their appreciation meant more to Maria than any formal recognition could provide. Later that evening, Maria found time to write an email to her family. She kept the message light and positive, focusing on routine aspects of base life rather than the day's dangerous developments. Her parents worried enough already, and there was no need to add to their concerns with detailed accounts of combat operations. Before heading to her quarters, Maria stopped by the communications center to check on the night shift. The base operated around the clock, and smooth transitions between shifts were essential for maintaining operational readiness. She briefed the incoming operators on the day's activities and ensured that all systems were functioning properly. The following morning brought new challenges and responsibilities. Intelligence reports suggested increased enemy activity in the region, and base security was heightened accordingly. Maria arrived at the communications center early to review overnight traffic and prepare for what promised to be another demanding day. The routine of military life provided structure and purpose, but Maria understood that each day could bring unexpected developments. Her role as a communications operator placed her at the center of base operations, where split-second decisions and flawless execution could mean the difference between success and failure. As she settled into her workstation and began the morning equipment checks, Maria reflected on her journey from a small-town Texas restaurant to serving as a critical link in military operations halfway around the world. The path had been challenging, but every day brought opportunities to make a meaningful difference in the lives of her fellow soldiers. The radio crackled to life with the first transmissions of the day, and Maria focused her attention on the screens before her. Somewhere in the mountains beyond the base perimeter, soldiers depended on her expertise to keep them connected and safe. The responsibility was immense, but Maria Santos was ready for whatever challenges the day might bring. Unbeknownst to her, this particular Thursday would test every skill she had developed and push her far beyond the comfortable boundaries of her communications center. Events were already in motion that would soon place her directly in harm's way, forcing her to discover reserves of courage she never knew existed. The first indication of trouble came through routine intelligence briefings. Enemy forces were reportedly moving in the region, but such reports were common and rarely resulted in direct threats to the base itself. Maria processed the information according to standard procedures, updating threat assessments and ensuring that all units received current intelligence updates. By late afternoon, the base was operating under heightened security protocols. Additional sentries were posted, and all personnel were advised to remain vigilant for unusual activity. Maria continued her duties in the communications center, monitoring radio traffic and maintaining contact with scattered units across the operational area. The transition to evening brought no reduction in activity levels. If anything, radio traffic increased as units reported their positions and received updated orders for night operations. Maria's headset buzzed constantly with transmissions requiring immediate attention and careful documentation. As darkness fell over the mountains, Maria prepared for what she expected would be a long night of coordinating communications for multiple simultaneous operations. She had no way of knowing that before dawn, her quiet professionalism would be tested by circumstances far beyond anything her training had prepared her to handle. The attack began at 0347 hours with a coordinated mortar barrage that shook the entire base. Maria was jolted awake in her quarters by the first explosions, followed immediately by the wailing of air raid sirens. Training took over as she grabbed her gear and raced through the corridors toward the communications center, dodging other soldiers moving to their emergency positions. The communications center had taken a direct hit. Smoke poured from the damaged building, and debris blocked the main entrance. Maria stared in shock at the destruction of her workplace, watching flames consume equipment that had been functioning perfectly just hours earlier. The acrid smell of burning electronics mixed with cordite from the ongoing bombardment. Sergeant First Class Johnson appeared through the smoke, his uniform torn and his face streaked with dirt. Santos, the backup communication post is in the northern bunker. We need to establish emergency communications immediately. Together, they fought their way through the chaos toward the backup facility. Explosions continued to rock the base as enemy forces pressed their assault. The northern bunker, built into a hillside for maximum protection, housed emergency communication equipment that was rarely used but constantly maintained for situations exactly like this. Inside the bunker, Maria quickly assessed the available equipment. The backup systems were older and more limited than her usual workstation, but they were functional. Her hands moved automatically across unfamiliar controls as she worked to establish contact with higher command and coordinate the base defense. The first priority was determining the scope of the attack and the status of base personnel. Radio calls flooded in from different sectors as unit leaders reported casualties, ammunition status, and enemy positions. Maria's training in communications management became critical as she organized the flood of information and ensured that vital messages reached the appropriate recipients. Major Harrison, the base commander, arrived at the bunker with his operations staff. The command post had been destroyed in the initial bombardment, making the backup communication facility the new nerve center for base defense operations. Maria found herself at the center of a desperate battle for survival. Santos, I need a status report on all perimeter positions, Major Harrison ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. Maria worked frantically to contact each defensive position. Several checkpoints had been overrun, and 2 guard towers were not responding to radio calls. The eastern perimeter was under heavy assault, and the defenders were requesting immediate reinforcement and ammunition resupply. Through her headset, Maria could hear the sounds of battle growing closer. Small arms fire echoed through the mountains, punctuated by the deeper rumble of heavy weapons. The enemy had achieved tactical surprise and was pressing their advantage with ruthless efficiency. As dawn approached, the situation became increasingly desperate. Enemy forces had penetrated the outer defenses and were advancing toward the core of the base. Maria maintained her position at the radio, coordinating defensive actions and calling for reinforcements from nearby units. The backup generator powdered the communication equipment, but fuel was running low. If power failed, the base would lose its ability to coordinate defense and call for support. Maria worked with the maintenance crew to implement power conservation measures while maintaining essential communications. Johnson appeared at her station with disturbing news. Santos were getting reports of enemy infiltrators inside the perimeter. They're wearing captured uniforms and equipment. Be extra careful about authentication procedures. The warning sent a chill through Maria's spine. The enemy was not only attacking the base directly, but had also infiltrated personnel inside the defenses. Every radio transmission now required careful verification to ensure authenticity. Around mid-morning, the base received unexpected assistance. A convoy of Army Rangers, originally en route to another objective, had heard the distress calls and diverted to provide support. Their arrival was coordinated through Maria's radio traffic as she guided them to the most critical defensive positions. The Rangers brought fresh ammunition, medical supplies, and, most importantly, experienced combat leadership. Staff Sergeant Jake Morrison, a veteran Ranger with multiple deployments, established contact with Maria's communication post to coordinate the counterattack. Base Commo, this is Ranger 6. We're in position and ready to begin clearing operations. Need you to coordinate with your people so we don't have any friendly fire incidents. Maria's role suddenly expanded beyond communications management. She became the critical link between base defenders and the Rangers, ensuring that both forces could work together effectively without accidentally engaging each other in the confusion of battle. The counterattack began with Rangers systematically clearing buildings and eliminating enemy infiltrators. Maria tracked their progress through radio reports while simultaneously coordinating supporting fire from remaining base defenses. The complex operation required precise timing and flawless communication. By afternoon, the immediate threat to the base had been neutralized, but enemy forces remained in the surrounding area. Intelligence reports suggested that the attack had been a coordinated effort involving multiple enemy units, and additional assaults were possible. Major Harrison gathered his staff in the bunker to assess the situation. The base had survived the attack, but at considerable cost. Several soldiers had been killed, and many more were wounded. Critical infrastructure had been damaged, and defensive capabilities were significantly reduced. Santos, the Major, addressed Maria directly. Your performance during the attack was exceptional. Without reliable communications, we wouldn't have been able to coordinate our defense or guide the Rangers to our position. Maria felt pride mixed with exhaustion. She had performed her duties under extreme pressure, but the cost of the battle weighed heavily on her mind. Friends and colleagues had been injured or killed, and the base would require weeks of rebuilding to return to full operational capability. As evening approached, enemy activity in the area remained high. Intelligence suggested that hostile forces were regrouping for potential follow-up attacks. The Rangers established defensive positions around the damaged base, while Maria maintained communication with higher command to request additional reinforcements and supplies. Staff Sergeant Morrison approached her station during a brief lull in radio traffic. The Ranger's uniform was dirty and torn from the day's fighting, but his eyes remained alert and focused. You did good work today, Sergeant, Morrison said. Most communications people never see action like this. You kept your head and got the job done when it mattered most. Maria appreciated the recognition from such an experienced soldier, but she remained focused on her responsibilities. The night promised to bring new challenges, and maintaining reliable communications would be critical for the base's continued survival. The backup generator coughed and sputtered, reminding everyone of the precarious nature of their situation. Without power, the communication equipment would fail, leaving the base isolated and vulnerable. Maria worked with maintenance personnel to implement additional conservation measures and prepare backup power sources. Around midnight, disturbing intelligence reports began filtering through higher command channels. The attack on forward operating base Kestrel was part of a larger enemy offensive targeting multiple coalition positions across the region. Several other bases had come under assault, and available reinforcements were stretched thin. Maria documented the intelligence reports and ensured that base leadership received updated threat assessments. The information painted a grim picture of coordinated enemy action designed to disrupt coalition operations and inflict maximum casualties. Despite her exhaustion, Maria remained at her post throughout the night. The responsibility of maintaining communications during such a critical period could not be delegated or delayed. Every transmission might contain vital information that could affect the safety of personnel or the success of defensive operations. As dawn broke over the mountains, enemy activity appeared to decrease. Reconnaissance flights reported that hostile forces were withdrawing from the immediate area, possibly to avoid daylight engagement with coalition air assets. The immediate threat to the base was diminishing, but vigilance remained essential. Major Harrison convened his staff for an early morning briefing. The base had survived the night, but significant challenges remained. Medical evacuations were needed for wounded personnel, critical supplies were running low, and defensive positions required reinforcement. Maria provided a comprehensive communications summary, detailing all overnight traffic and current contact status with higher command. Her report was thorough and professional, despite the exhaustion evident in her voice. The arrival of a medical evacuation helicopter provided the first sign that normal operations might soon resume. Maria coordinated the landing and ensured that wounded personnel were properly manifested for transport to medical facilities. The routine nature of the task provided welcome relief from the chaos of combat operations. As the day progressed, additional support began arriving at the base. Engineering teams came to assess damage and begin repairs, while supply convoys brought ammunition, food, and medical equipment. The base was slowly returning to operational status, though full recovery would require weeks of effort. Staff Sergeant Morrison stopped by the communication bunker before his unit departed for their original mission. The Rangers had accomplished their objective of securing the base, but other duties called them elsewhere. "Santos, I hope our paths cross again under better circumstances," Morrison said with a slight smile. "You're a credit to your service, and I'd be honored to work with you again." Maria watched the Rangers depart with mixed emotions. Their arrival had turned the tide of battle, but their departure left the base feeling vulnerable once again. She returned to her communication duties, knowing that constant vigilance would be required to prevent future attacks. The experience had changed something fundamental in Maria's understanding of her role. No longer was she simply a communications operator sitting safely behind defensive lines. The attack had demonstrated that in modern warfare, there were no truly safe positions, and every soldier might be called upon to face dangers beyond their normal duties. As she prepared reports documenting the attack and its aftermath, Maria reflected on the lessons learned. Technical competence was important, but the ability to remain calm under extreme pressure and adapt to unexpected circumstances was equally crucial. The next attack might come without warning, and she needed to be ready for whatever challenges it might bring. 3 weeks after the attack, forward operating base Kestrel had returned to something resembling normal operations. The communications center had been rebuilt with improved equipment and better defensive positioning. Maria found herself promoted to staff sergeant and designated as the senior communications operator for the base. The recognition was gratifying, but it came with increased responsibilities that weighed heavily on her shoulders. The morning briefing revealed disturbing intelligence about increased enemy activity in the region. Coalition forces had disrupted several weapons caches and captured enemy personnel who revealed plans for coordinated attacks throughout the province. Base Kestrel remained a high-priority target due to its strategic location and importance to regional operations. Major Harrison had been replaced by Lieutenant Colonel Patricia Williams, a career infantry officer with extensive combat experience. Williams brought a different leadership style that emphasized aggressive patrolling and proactive engagement with enemy forces. Her approach contrasted sharply with the more defensive posture that had previously characterized base operations. "Ladies and gentlemen," Colonel Williams addressed the assembled staff, "intelligence indicates that enemy forces are planning another major offensive. We're not going to wait for them to bring the fight to us. Starting tomorrow, we'll be conducting extended patrols to disrupt their planning and force them to react to our initiatives." Maria listened carefully to the operational briefing, understanding that increased patrol activity would place greater demands on communication systems. Maintaining contact with multiple units operating across rough terrain would challenge her team's capabilities and require careful frequency management. After the briefing, Colonel Williams approached Maria privately. "Sergeant Santos, I've read the reports from the attack. Your performance was exceptional under extreme circumstances. I'm counting on you to keep our people connected during the upcoming operations." The conversation reinforced Maria's sense of responsibility. Soldiers' lives depended on reliable communications, and any failure on her part could result in catastrophic consequences. The technical aspects of the job remained the same, but the psychological pressure had increased significantly. The first patrol under the new operational tempo departed at dawn the following day. Captain Rodriguez led a reinforced platoon toward a suspected enemy staging area located 15 kilometers northwest of the base. Maria established communication protocols and ensured that backup frequencies were available if primary channels were compromised. The patrol's initial reports were routine. They encountered no immediate resistance and were proceeding according to schedule toward their objective. Maria monitored their progress while simultaneously tracking two other patrols operating in different sectors. Around mid-morning, the situation changed dramatically. Captain Rodriguez's patrol came under heavy fire from prepared positions that had not been identified by previous intelligence. The initial contact report was fragmented and difficult to understand due to background noise and poor signal quality. "Base, this is Alpha 6, Rodriguez transmitted urgently. We're taking effective fire from multiple positions. Request immediate support and medical evacuation capability." Maria's training took over as she began coordinating the emergency response. She established contact with aviation units, alerted medical personnel, and notified Colonel Williams of the developing situation. The familiar routine of crisis management helped maintain her focus despite the adrenaline surge. The patrol's situation deteriorated rapidly. Enemy forces had established overlapping fields of fire that prevented the soldiers from advancing or withdrawing. They were effectively pinned down in open terrain with limited cover and no clear escape route. "Base Commo, we've got multiple casualties," Rodriguez reported. "Need immediate extraction or we're going to be overrun." Maria worked frantically to coordinate rescue operations. Attack helicopters were en route to provide fire support, but they would need precise target coordinates to avoid hitting friendly forces. Medical evacuation aircraft were standing by, but they could not land while the area remained under enemy control. Colonel Williams arrived at the communications center as the crisis unfolded. She monitored radio traffic while Maria managed the complex coordination required to support the embattled patrol. The situation required split-second timing and flawless execution. "Santos, can you raise any other units in the area who might be able to assist?" Williams asked. Maria quickly checked the positions of other friendly forces. A Ranger patrol, led by Staff Sergeant Morrison, was operating approximately 8 kilometers from Rodriguez's position. They were the closest available support, but reaching the contact site would require them to cross difficult terrain under potentially hostile observation. "Ranger 6, this is Base Commo," Maria transmitted. "We have friendly forces in contact at grid reference 628. Can you provide assistance?" Morrison's response was immediate and professional. "Base Commo, we're moving toward the contact site. Estimate 20 minutes to reach effective supporting position." The next 20 minutes felt like hours as Maria coordinated between multiple units. Attack helicopters arrived on station and began engaging enemy positions, but the complex terrain made target identification difficult. Rodriguez's patrol remained pinned down, and casualties were mounting. Morrison's Rangers reached an overlooked position that provided observation of the contact site. Their arrival changed the tactical situation as they began engaging enemy positions with precision rifle fire. The additional pressure forced enemy forces to divide their attention between multiple threats. "Base, this is Ranger 6, Morrison reported. "We can see Alpha's position. Enemy forces are located in rocky outcrops approximately 200 meters to their north and east. We're engaging now." The coordinated attack began to turn the tide of battle. Helicopter gunships engaged targets marked by the Rangers while Rodriguez's patrol provided suppressing fire and began moving toward more defensible positions. Maria tracked the complex operation through radio reports while coordinating supporting fires and medical evacuation. The enemy forces began withdrawing under pressure from multiple directions. Rodriguez's patrol was finally able to break contact and move to a landing zone where medical evacuation helicopters could safely extract casualties. The operation had been successful, but at significant cost. After the immediate crisis had passed, Maria found herself emotionally drained. The intensity of coordinating life and death operations took a toll that went far beyond physical exhaustion. Every decision carried the weight of human consequences, and the responsibility was sometimes overwhelming. Colonel Williams commended Maria's performance during the operation, but praise felt hollow when measured against the cost in human suffering. 3 soldiers had been seriously wounded, and 1 had died during the evacuation flight. The success of the mission provided little comfort when weighed against such losses. Over the following days, patrol operations continued with increased intensity. Enemy forces were reacting to coalition pressure by becoming more aggressive and taking greater risks. The tempo of operations placed continuous stress on communication systems and personnel. Maria worked extended shifts to ensure adequate coverage during critical operations. Her team rotated through different positions, but she remained the primary coordinator for complex missions. The responsibility was exhausting, but she refused to delegate tasks that might affect soldier safety. The stress began affecting her sleep and appetite. Nightmares about failed communications and lost patrols interrupted her rest, and she found it difficult to relax even during off-duty hours. The cumulative effect of constant pressure was taking a psychological toll that she struggled to acknowledge. Sergeant First Class Johnson, who had returned to duty after recovering from injuries sustained during the base attack, noticed the changes in Maria's demeanor. As her former supervisor and mentor, he felt responsible for her well-being. "Santos, you're pushing yourself too hard," Johnson observed during a quiet moment. "You can't carry the entire burden of communications on your shoulders. Trust your team and delegate some responsibilities." Maria appreciated the concern, but she found it difficult to relinquish control during such critical periods. Her perfectionist tendencies, which had served her well during routine operations, were becoming a liability under extended stress conditions. The breakthrough came during another crisis situation. A patrol led by Lieutenant Parker had become separated during a firefight and was lost in mountainous terrain. Radio contact was sporadic due to terrain interference, and their exact location was unknown. Enemy forces were actively searching for the missing soldiers, making time a critical factor. Maria had been working for 18 straight hours when the emergency developed. Exhaustion clouded her judgment, and she made several communication errors that complicated the search effort. The mistakes were minor, but they could have had serious consequences under different circumstances. Recognizing that fatigue was affecting her performance, Maria made the difficult decision to temporarily relinquish control to her deputy. Corporal Martinez, though less experienced, was well-trained and capable of managing the operation under supervision. "Martinez, take the primary radio," Maria instructed. "I'll monitor from the backup position and provide guidance as needed." The decision proved wise. Martinez handled the coordination professionally while Maria provided oversight and caught potential problems before they became critical. The missing patrol was located within 2 hours and successfully extracted without casualties. The experience taught Maria valuable lessons about leadership and delegation. Attempting to handle every situation personally was not only exhausting, but potentially dangerous. Building a strong team and trusting subordinates was essential for long-term success. Colonel Williams recognized the importance of preventing burnout among critical personnel. She implemented rotating schedules that ensured adequate rest for communications operators while maintaining operational capability. The changes improved morale and effectiveness across the entire team. As autumn approached, intelligence reports suggested that enemy forces were preparing for a major offensive before winter weather limited their mobility. The prospect of another large-scale attack weighed heavily on everyone's minds, but improved preparations provided confidence that the base could withstand future assaults. Maria used the relative calm to train her replacement operators and improve communication procedures. Lessons learned from recent operations were incorporated into standard protocols, and equipment redundancy was increased to prevent single points of failure. The relationship between Maria and Staff Sergeant Morrison had evolved through their shared experiences during crisis situations. Professional respect had grown into mutual admiration, and they often consulted each other about tactical and operational matters. "You've come a long way from the quiet communications operator I met during the first attack," Morrison observed during one of their conversations. "Combat has a way of revealing character, and yours has proven exceptional." Maria appreciated the recognition from someone she respected, but she remained focused on continuous improvement. Each operation provided opportunities to learn and grow, and she was determined to be ready for whatever challenges the future might bring. The autumn months brought increasing enemy activity as hostile forces attempted to conduct operations before winter weather limited their mobility. Maria's team handled the increased tempo professionally, applying lessons learned from earlier experiences to maintain effective communications across multiple simultaneous operations. Personal relationships had deepened through shared hardships. The communications team functioned as a tight-knit unit where everyone understood their role and trusted their colleagues completely. The camaraderie provided emotional support that helped individuals cope with the stress of constant operations. Maria's family back in Texas worried about her deployment, but her letters home remained optimistic and focused on positive aspects of her service. She took pride in her contributions to mission success and the professional growth she had experienced through challenging circumstances. As winter approached and the operational tempo began to slow, Maria reflected on her transformation from a routine communications operator to a critical leader in combat operations. The journey had been difficult and sometimes traumatic, but it had also provided opportunities for growth and achievement that would have been impossible in any other environment. The base prepared for winter operations with improved defenses and better trained personnel. Maria looked forward to the challenges ahead, confident in her abilities and committed to supporting her fellow soldiers through whatever trials might come. Winter arrived early in the mountains, bringing snow that transformed the harsh landscape into an even more challenging environment. The extreme weather limited enemy activity, but created new difficulties for base operations. Maintaining communication equipment in sub-zero temperatures required constant vigilance and additional maintenance procedures. Maria had adapted to her expanded responsibilities as senior communications operator. Her team now included 6 personnel, each specializing in different aspects of communication support. The group had developed into a highly efficient unit capable of handling multiple complex operations simultaneously. The relative quiet of winter operations allowed time for reflection and planning. Maria used the opportunity to develop comprehensive training programs and improve equipment reliability. Her reputation for technical competence and calm leadership had spread throughout the base, earning respect from soldiers across all specialties. Lieutenant Colonel Williams called Maria to her office on a cold February morning. The colonel's expression was serious, suggesting that important matters were under discussion. "Sergeant Santos, I've received orders for a special operation that will require your personal involvement," Williams began. "Intelligence has identified a high-value target in the region, and we're being tasked to provide communication support for a joint operation." Maria listened carefully as Williams outlined the mission. Coalition Special Operations Forces were planning a raid on an enemy compound located deep in hostile territory. The target was believed to be a senior enemy commander responsible for coordinating attacks against coalition forces throughout the province. The operation will require forward deployment of a communication team to ensure reliable contact between the raid force and supporting units, Williams explained. Given the critical nature of this mission, I'm assigning you as the senior communications representative. The assignment represented both an honor and a significant challenge. Forward deployment meant leaving the relative safety of the base to operate in dangerous territory where enemy contact was likely. Maria's technical skills and proven performance under pressure made her the logical choice for such a critical mission. Preparation for the operation consumed the next 2 weeks. Maria worked with special operations personnel to establish communication protocols and identify potential problems. The raid would involve multiple units operating across a wide area, requiring complex coordination and precise timing. Staff Sergeant Morrison's Ranger unit would provide security for the communication team during their forward deployment. The news pleased Maria, as Morrison's professionalism and combat experience provided confidence that her team would be properly protected during the dangerous mission. "It's good to be working together again," Morrison commented during a planning session. "Your communication support during previous operations has been exceptional. Having reliable contact with higher command will be critical for mission success." The forward deployment site was located on a mountain ridge overlooking the target area. The position provided excellent observation and communication coverage, but it was exposed and difficult to defend if discovered by enemy forces. Careful camouflage and noise discipline would be essential for maintaining concealment. Maria's communication team was reduced to essential personnel for the mission. She would be accompanied by Corporal Martinez and Specialist Thompson, both experienced operators who had proven their abilities during previous operations. The small team size increased individual responsibility, but provided better operational security. The insertion was conducted at night using helicopters that approached the landing zone from an indirect route to avoid detection. Maria carried her personal weapon along with communication equipment, understanding that every member of the team might need to fight if the position was compromised. The ridge position offered a spectacular view of the surrounding mountains, but Maria had little time to appreciate the scenery. Establishing communication contact with all participating units required immediate attention, and time was limited before the operation commenced. "Base, this is Overwatch," Maria transmitted using the mission call sign. "Communication team is in position and ready to support operations." The acknowledgement from base operations confirmed that the communication link was functioning properly. Similar checks with aviation units, artillery positions, and the raid force verified that all elements were ready to proceed with the mission. Morrison's Rangers established a defensive perimeter around the communication position. Their camouflage positions were invisible to casual observation, but they provided overlapping fields of fire that would make enemy approach extremely difficult. The professional setup increased Maria's confidence in the team's security. As dawn broke over the mountains, final preparations for the raid were completed. The target compound was located in a valley several kilometers from Maria's position, visible through binoculars as a cluster of buildings surrounded by defensive walls. Intelligence reports suggested that approximately 20 enemy personnel were present at the location. "All stations, this is Control," came a transmission from the operations commander. "Operation Falcon Strike is commencing. All units stand by for execution." Maria monitored multiple radio frequencies as the complex operation began. Special operations forces moved toward the target, while aviation assets positioned themselves for supporting fires. Artillery units prepared to engage defensive positions on command, and medical evacuation teams stood ready to respond to casualties. The initial phase proceeded according to plan. Raid forces reached their objective undetected and began the assault on the compound. Maria relayed situation reports to higher command while coordinating supporting fires and tracking the progress of multiple elements. "Overwatch, this is Strike Team," came an urgent transmission. "We're taking heavy fire from secondary positions not identified in intelligence reports. Request immediate suppression of targets at grid reference 742. Maria quickly processed the fire mission and coordinated with artillery units. Within minutes, high explosive shells were impacting the enemy positions, allowing the raid force to continue their advance. The precision of the supporting fires demonstrated the value of reliable communications during complex operations. The target building was secured after 15 minutes of intense fighting. High-value documents and equipment were captured along with several enemy personnel. The operation was achieving its objectives, but enemy reinforcements were reportedly moving toward the area. All units, this is Control, Maria transmitted. Enemy QRF is approaching from the south. Estimate 15 minutes to contact with friendly positions. The Quick Reaction Force posed a significant threat to both the raid team and Maria's communication position. If enemy forces gained control of the surrounding terrain, extraction would become extremely difficult and dangerous. Morrison appeared at Maria's position with concerning news. Santos, we've got movement on the ridges to our east. Looks like a small enemy patrol, probably trying to locate our position. The tactical situation was deteriorating rapidly. The raid force needed time to complete their mission and prepare for extraction, but enemy forces were converging on the area from multiple directions. Maria's communication team was becoming increasingly isolated and vulnerable. Overwatch, this is Strike Team, came another urgent transmission. We need 10 more minutes to complete mission. Can you maintain communication support? Maria looked at Morrison, who nodded grimly. The Rangers could hold their position for a short time, but sustained combat against superior numbers would eventually overwhelm their defensive capabilities. Strike Team, this is Overwatch. We'll maintain position and provide communication support. Complete your mission. The enemy patrol Morrison had spotted was moving closer to the communication position. Through her binoculars, Maria could see armed figures climbing the rocky slopes toward their ridge. The Rangers prepared for contact, while she continued coordinating the overall operation. The first enemy contact came as small arms fire directed toward the Ranger positions. Morrison's team returned fire with precision shooting that forced the attackers to seek cover. The firefight was brief, but intense, with bullets ricocheting off rocks around the communication equipment. Base, this is Overwatch. Maria transmitted calmly despite the chaos around her. We're in contact with enemy forces, but maintaining position. Continue mission as planned. Corporal Martinez and Specialist Thompson assisted the Rangers by providing additional firepower while maintaining essential communication equipment. Maria remained focused on her radio duties, understanding that losing contact with the raid force could result in mission failure. The enemy Quick Reaction Force arrived at the target compound just as the Special Operations Team completed their mission. Heavy fighting erupted in the valley as the raid force began their withdrawal to the extraction point. Maria coordinated helicopter support and medical evacuation while simultaneously directing artillery fire against enemy reinforcements. Overwatch, this is Strike Team, came the welcome transmission. Mission complete. Moving to Extraction Point Bravo. The success of the raid provided satisfaction, but Maria's team remained in immediate danger. Enemy forces had identified their position and were attempting to overrun the communication site. Morrison's Rangers were fighting desperately to maintain their defensive perimeter. Santos, we need to start thinking about our own extraction, Morrison shouted over the gunfire. The enemy is bringing up heavier weapons, and we can't hold this position much longer. Maria coordinated with base operations to arrange emergency extraction for her team. Helicopter support was available, but the landing zone was under enemy observation and fire. The extraction would require precise timing and significant risk. Base, this is Overwatch. Request immediate extraction from primary landing zone. Position is under enemy attack. The response came quickly. Medical evacuation helicopters were en route and would arrive within 10 minutes. The communication team needed to maintain their position until the aircraft arrived, then move quickly to the landing zone under fire. The extraction was chaotic and dangerous. Enemy forces directed heavy fire toward the helicopters as they attempted to land. Morrison's Rangers provided covering fire, while Maria's team ran across open ground carrying essential communication equipment. Specialist Thompson was wounded by enemy fire during the dash to the helicopters, but Corporal Martinez helped him reach safety. Maria was the last aboard, ensuring that all critical equipment was recovered and that no personnel were left behind. As the helicopters climbed away from the mountain ridge, Maria looked back at the position where they had spent the morning. Enemy forces were overrunning the site, but their mission had been successful. The raid force had achieved its objectives and withdrawn safely, thanks in part to reliable communication support. The flight back to base provided time for Maria to decompress from the intensity of combat. The mission had pushed her far beyond her normal duties as a communication operator, requiring her to function effectively under direct enemy fire. The experience had been terrifying, but also professionally validating. Lieutenant Colonel Williams met the returning team at the landing zone. Her expression showed relief that the mission had been successful and that casualties had been minimal. The operation had achieved strategic objectives while demonstrating the capabilities of well-trained personnel working together under extreme conditions. "Outstanding work, Sergeant Santos," Williams said as Maria climbed down from the helicopter. "Your communication support was critical to mission success." The Special Operations Commander specifically requested that his appreciation be passed to your team. Recognition from Special Operations personnel carried particular weight, as these units maintained extremely high standards and rarely offered praise lightly. Maria felt proud of her team's performance, but she was also concerned about Specialist Thompson's injuries. The medical team determined that Thompson's wounds were not life-threatening, but he would require several weeks of recovery. His courage during the extraction had been remarkable, and Maria made sure his actions were properly documented in her mission report. Over the following days, Maria reflected on how much she had changed since arriving at Forward Operating Base Kestrel. The quiet communication operator who had focused on routine radio traffic had evolved into a combat leader capable of functioning under extreme pressure in dangerous situations. The mission had demonstrated that modern warfare required flexibility and adaptability from all personnel. Traditional distinctions between combat and support roles were becoming increasingly meaningless as situations demanded that every soldier be prepared to face direct enemy action. Staff Sergeant Morrison visited Maria in the communications center several days after the mission. His respect for her capabilities had grown considerably through their shared experiences in combat situations. "You've proven that communication operators can be just as tough as any infantry soldier," Morrison commented. "Your performance under fire was exceptional, and your team support made the difference between success and failure." Maria appreciated the recognition, but she remained focused on continuous improvement. Each mission provided opportunities to learn and develop new capabilities. The challenge of supporting complex operations in hostile environments pushed her to grow both professionally and personally. As spring approached and the operational tempo increased, Maria prepared for new challenges with confidence built through hard-won experience. She had proven herself capable of operating effectively under extreme conditions, and her reputation for reliability and courage had earned respect throughout the base. The transformation from communication operator to combat leader had been completed through trials of fire that revealed inner strengths she never knew she possessed. Maria Santos had become the soldier she never expected to be, ready to face whatever dangers the next mission might bring. Her story had become an inspiration to other personnel who faced their own challenges and fears. The quiet professional who had arrived at the base focused on technical competence had evolved into a leader who demonstrated that courage and determination could overcome any obstacle. The legacy of her service would extend far beyond her individual achievements. Maria had proven that every soldier, regardless of their specialty or background, possessed the potential for greatness when circumstances demanded extraordinary performance. Her example would inspire others to discover their own hidden reserves of strength and capability.